Okay, so we were talking. The one thing I wanted to get into immediately was the Cavani controversy.
Yeah.
And I think you are like a lot closer to this than I am. So I wanted to make sure that we first sort of got your thoughts about how that all went down and how it became such a huge issue and sort of a media firestorm, basically.
Oh, yeah, I went through a little bit of that in the last time we talked, I think, but I'll kind of paraphrase. I think that obviously Neymar was in the wrong in how he sort of acted on the field. I think if you have an issue with it, you try to hide it, and you talk about it in the locker room because it's a Ligue 1 game. It's against Lyon. There's 5,000 cameras. So it's going to catch whatever you're doing. The cameras are always on Neymar. There's always a like, if you ever watch the Classico, they'll have a camera on Messi and they'll have a camera on Ronaldo before he went to Juventus.
Yeah.
So there's always a camera on. So there's nothing you can do as a top soccer star on the field that's not going to be filmed. So you have to know you have to be aware of that. But with that being said, I think the manager could have just came out and said, here's what we're going to do. We're handling it internally. We'll figure out who's going to take the penalties. By the next game, we'll know, and we'll have this problem solved. And then you don't talk about it again. And either Neymar starts taking the penalties or Cavani continues to. But it's not. You can't have it be, settle it amongst themselves. Like that just opens the door for it to go longer. And it's French. It's the French press, so they're gonna jump on anything like that. I think it was sort of Neymar being a bit naive as to sort of what the French press would do, when it comes to him. I don't think he thought they were going to be as hard on him as they were. I just don't think he knew. Yeah. I think part of the issue has also just been that he hasn't been used to French culture yet. So I think a lot of that sort of it's not like sort of the Spanish media where if they're on your side, they're on your side, and they'll let you get away with stuff if you're a certain type of player.
Yeah.
In France, it's more they're just going to go off. They're just going to shit on everybody. No, there is no sort of sacred cow in France. Maybe Kylian Mbappe is as close to that as you're going to get. Maybe Zinedine Zidane back in the day, but especially if you're not French, you're not going to get the special treatment.
You're not protected, basically.
Yeah, you're not protected.
Well, and I think some of it is also I read all the time, and I'm not going to comment on this because I'm not an expert, so I'm more asking you about sort of the vengeance that L'Equipe wants to get against PSG. I mean, just the fact that they're just because PSG is like L'Equipe would almost rather be. They would almost rather the French league be a trash league and Marseille and Lyon and all these traditional powers be really good than for PSG to have done it the way that they've done it and for all boats to rise. You know what I mean? For the league to rise into real, not into prominence. That's really extreme, but into the level of. I think the French league is honestly already as good as the German league. And that is a symbol of how PSG I think has pulled the league forward. To be candid, but I think it's slowly getting into that tier of the Italian league and the Spanish league and the Premier League, and I think that the French press, it's crazy to me because it almost feels like they would rather be mired in mediocrity than be pulled into new echelons the way that PSG has done it, basically.
Yeah, that's pretty much right. You're characterizing it pretty well. I will say that the history of French football has been such that France was not a elite world power in football for a very, very long time. It really only they had a little bit in the 50s. They really had a good run in the 80s. Back to prominence in the 90s and early 2000s. So France is a relatively new footballing nation to a degree. A new meaning 60, 70 years or so, where it's where they've had an imprint on the world game, where it wasn't sort of this provincial deal. Because for the most part, French teams were, founded by Englishmen who were, who went to France and they needed a football club to join, so they made a football club. So, with that being said, I don't want to get too far into that, but I do feel like there's a anti-PSG vibe to a lot of that. I think L'Equipe is probably the worst of that, but I don't think it's that bad. Like, I think it's not flattering coverage, but I just tend to think that the French press will do that to a lot of teams, maybe except for Marseille. Just because Marseille is still the most popular team actually in France. So, they're going to sell, Marseille fans are going to buy the most papers. Marseille fans are going to be the most vocal in France. So, I think that's kind of why L'Equipe has sort of an anti-PSG slant. But I don't think it's that. Like, I've seen worse. Like, I think the English press is 10 times worse on their players than L'Equipe is.
Okay, interesting. Well, and I do find it curious that I think he got so much hate for what happened with Cavani, because it's not like it would be. I mean, I know Cavani is very much loved by the PSG faithful. I know he has a really good relationship with the supporters and stuff, but it's not like Cavani was part of the club pre, chic investment, right? He's been purchased since then, and was brought in because of the big money that they've been able to splash, right? I mean, that is part of it, and so I think it surprised me a little bit that way.
But Cavani he's the type of player that, as a diehard supporter of the club, a supporter that, like an ultra, a fan who goes to every game and, a fan who goes to every game, who goes to the road games, who brings out the flares and stuff. He's the type of guy that you gravitate towards because he works hard, he scores goals, he has a connection with the fans. Neymar's not like that yet. Neymar's he's always sort of, you're always looking up at him as opposed to a Cavani who you kind of feel like he's one of you. Like, he has that vibe to him. Right. It's like, this guy could be me. He just has that, he has that aura that he gives off. So I think that's really where that comes from. And again, it's a great soap opera story.
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
If you're going to assign blame as a percentage of 100, where do you assign the blame? And I would say the major blame recipients, if you had to choose a couple: Neymar, Cavani, Unai Emery, the French press, and I'll put Dani Alves in there also. What percentages would you assign across them?
I gotta figure that out, because that's okay, those are a few. Okay, so Neymar, I'd go 40%. I'd give him the majority. I'd give Unai Emery 30. I'd give Alves 10. I'd give the French press 10, and I'd give Cavani 5.
Okay.
So something along those lines.
Okay.
Because, again, it doesn't happen if Neymar waits till he gets to the locker room to have this discussion, which he could have had instead of kind of making a deal out of it on the field. The problem wouldn't have been as bad. It wouldn't have started. So I would look at it that way. But let me turn this around on you, because since we talked last, and in case this ever does come out, we recorded this over the span of 2 days. We had the Neymar Jr., I guess we'll call it apology, sponsored by Gillette.
Yeah.
Which is so Neymar. Like, that if there's anything to describe Neymar, if there's anything you can use, it's that his sort of, I guess you want to call it mea culpa rather than
mea culpa. It's not an apology. I think of it more as a mea culpa.
A mea culpa.
Which it's 6 of one, half a dozen the other, right?
Yes, but it's more of a mea. It's like it's an apology, but it's not really an apology. It's like an admission, but he's not like saying he was technically wrong. But the thing about it is, of course, Neymar uses it for a commercial gain, because that's who he is. And I talked about this earlier. There's people who are not authentic when it comes to their commercialism, and then there's people like Neymar who I think are genuinely authentic. I think this is who he is. Like, I think he sees nothing sort of wrong with doing his apology as an advertisement for Gillette shave gel. That's just how he is. And I don't hold that against him. I kind of find that to be the charm a little bit. But what did you think of that?
I just think it has to do with, he's just so tone deaf. It amazes me how just poorly advised I think sometimes he can be from a PR perspective. We touched on this a little bit when we talked on Sunday, is that, like, don't think sometimes he gets it or cares. You know what I mean? At the end of the day, first of all, the media is just latching onto this was ludicrous. Like on social media, it was like it must have been a slow news day because it was like basically my entire timeline was information about this advertisement. When in reality, it was not a big deal at all. But I think it just goes back to what we talked about last time, which is that when he was 17 years old, meeting with the Chelsea owners and them telling you, you could be the next Michael Jordan, you're the next brand, the Jordan brand, or whatever. And I think he's just always sort of thought things through that lens. And I think it rubs people the wrong way, for better or for worse. I'm not telling people how to think, by any stretch of the imagination, right? I mean, it was funny, Mark, I want to get your thoughts on this, is I think that the antithesis of Neymar is Steven Gerrard. I think they are the exact opposite. You know what I mean? And in the sense that I think, well, first of all, what I would say is Neymar's won way more. You know what I mean? Like, he's better. He'll be remembered as a better player. But Neymar belongs to nobody. He'll never carry except for Brazil. I don't think he'll ever carry the weight of a single team. In terms of I think Gerrard, especially at the end of his career, he was pushing that rock up the hill. I just don't ever see Neymar being in that situation where that would happen. I think that Gerrard was more less commercial, you know what I mean? Didn't want to be seen in public, was just trying to avoid, the public eye and all these types of things. Now, what I would say is that I think Gerrard was charged with assault multiple times. Neymar has never gotten in trouble with the law, ever. You know what I mean? And the irony, and also Neymar has won more things, gets less red cards on the pitch, you know what I mean? And has generally just been better and has been better in terms of giving the supporters what they actually want.
Yeah.
And yet, I would say that people will remember Gerrard, even if you're not a Liverpool supporter, more fondly than they will remember Neymar. And I think it comes down to this commercialism thing, because I think he's just wants to be in the public eye, and he just wants to be seen, and he wants to just have his own brand and all these types of things. And I think it just turns a lot of traditional supporters off to him.
Yeah, I would agree. I think, but I don't necessarily think he's wrong. If his goal is to, our goal in our jobs, and we have reasons for what we do, and I do my job because I love to work with the people that I work with, and I'm a teacher, so I love the sort of reward of that. But I'm not doing it for free. I'm not doing it for no money. Yeah. So I think all of us, to an extent, do these things for money. And if you're Neymar, you're looking to, as a business person, sort of make as much profit and use these kinds of things as business opportunities, as opposed to letting a business opportunity pass. And I think the reason a player like Steven Gerrard, maybe even just to kind of make a more parallel comparison to somebody like a David Beckham will be known more around the world over the next 20 years than Steven Gerrard.
Yes.
And Beckham was a comparable player. Probably Gerrard was maybe better, but I'm not something I could necessarily compare the two. But Beckham's commercialism has given him the opportunity to live a very comfortable, easy, sort of rewarding life for himself. He's going to try to get an MLS team in Miami. He's looking to expand and be a business person outside of football. Steven Gerrard was not that type of person. Wayne Rooney's not that type of person. But I think the thing you're talking about is not so much the commercialism of Neymar as much as it is the sort of one of us aspect of a Gerrard and a Gerrard and a Wayne Rooney. Yeah. To a lot of people, having sort of humanity and having that sort of human flaw and having flaws and being a real person supersedes the talent and supersedes sort of the not getting in trouble part. It's almost part of the charm in a strange way, which is we as a society like people with flaws, especially more now than we ever have. And Neymar,
but they have to be the right kind of flaws, right, Mark?
Yes, but Neymar's a person who, and this is sort of the difference, he strives to be as perfect as he can be. And when he falls, when he makes mistakes, they're more pronounced. It's like, to use an example, it's like the pretty girl in high school with the perfect hair and all the up-to-date clothes, and one day she, slips on a banana peel and falls into a garbage can and everybody laughs. The reason that's so funny is because it's that person who tries so hard to be perfect has, they've made a mistake.
Yeah.
And you feed off of that because it's like, you're not so perfect after all. Look at you make a mistake falling on your ass like that. When somebody who everybody likes, who seems more human, falls on a banana peel or something, people chuckle, but for the most part, they, dust themselves off, they get up, and nobody remembers it 5 minutes later. That's sort of the dynamic we're looking at, and as I sort of go into that roundabout explanation, you get what I mean. And I think some of it with Neymar is that commercialism gives off an air of an act. And that Neymar is pretending to be something. And these moments where he dives, and these moments where he flops, and these moments where he embellishes, and these moments where he's yelling at the ref, and these moments where he is arguing with Cavani on the field, they're seen as sort of and I'm getting into the psyche. I don't necessarily believe this, but this is what I think the psyche of the people who boo him is. They see that, and they see somebody who's trying to be something they're not, falling from grace, and showing their ass, and showing who they really are. And I think it's more complicated than that. I know I'm talking about it, but I think it's more complicated than he's this, entitled person who tries to be perfect, and when he screws up, he acts like a baby. I don't think it's that simple. I think Neymar is the combination of all of these different human emotions and all of these different things about him. I think he can be all of those things at the same time. I don't think his commercialism is an act. I think he genuinely believes that he's doing people good, that he's helping people. And I think he sees himself like that, as somebody who's an influential person who can help people with his fame and his celebrity, and I think he believes that. I think his foundation bears that out. But it also rubs people the wrong way because I don't think people can understand commercialism as sort of a character trait. I think they see it as a flaw and sort of an act, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. And I do think that you have to consider the fact that, and we touched on this very briefly last time, but I don't know that Neymar ever was meant to be normal. Like, that was just never going to happen, right? I mean, it's just, I think when you watch the clips of him playing or coming off the bench for Santos when he's 17 years old and the Santos supporters are singing his name, he's not even played a single minute. He's 17 years old, you know what I mean? And they're singing his name before he even walks on the pitch. Like, the idea that he could have ever been normal is staggering to me. The idea that he could have been someone who seems like an everyman is staggering to me. He was never normal. Like, he was never meant to be normal. And I think the minute he kind of got on the pitch and showed how good he was relative to his peers in Brazil, especially because I think Brazil is a bit of a weaker league, you know what I mean, than the rest of the world, he was so much better that I think it immediately sort of catapults him into this situation where he is looking down on everybody else. I mean, just kind of think about his trajectory, even just for the national team. I mean, when he was 18 years old, over 100,000 people signed a petition to the Brazilian government to get him included into Dunga's team that went to the 2010 World Cup. Think about that. I mean, just think about how insane that is. That that he was so well known at 18. You know what I mean? That would even be a thing that happens at 22 years old. He was the best player for Brazil, and he wore the number 10 at Brazil's own World Cup at home. I mean, it's staggering that anyone would believe that he could ever act normal or be normal, because he never was. He was never meant to be. And I think his relationship with his dad obviously sort of did infuse him with this sort of commercial identity. And I think that only adds another layer between him and the supporters. Yeah. The other thing is, Neymar doesn't belong to anybody. And I think that that's sort of a critical thing here too. I think the commercialism of Neymar is enhanced because there's no club that owns him, right? You know what I mean? Like and I think the closest you can say is Santos, because he came up through the youth system. But ultimately, he did screw over Santos by signing the pre-agreement with Barcelona. So it's not like he feels some sort of massive debt to that club. I think he feels a debt to his father for setting him up so well. I think he feels a debt to himself for his outrageous talent and for how hard he works to be a professional. And I think he feels a debt to Brazil, because I think he is Brazilian at heart, obviously, and he wants to win a World Cup for Brazil. But he certainly doesn't feel like he belongs to Barcelona, and I don't think he believes he belongs to PSG. And I think that all of these things that we're talking about are just small, are layers that sort of pile up in between him and sort of the quote normal fan, right? And I think it does prevent him basically from connecting with people.
He's I think so abnormal in the way that he has been brought onto the stage. I would say and I think you've said this at times before. He's sort of the first social media athlete of that caliber. He's a social media creation. He's a YouTube creation. He's a Facebook creation. He's a creation of a new generation of Brazilians, a new generation of Europeans, a new generation of people who have, it's almost microwaved fame. You get all of your highlights on YouTube in the span of days, and all of a sudden, in the span of a year, you can go from somebody who no one really knows about to a national sensation. And I think, all things considered, he's done a really good job of resisting some of the temptations that come with that. There are a lot of young people, young child stars, and I already said this earlier, but there's already so many young stars that turn to drugs, alcohol, crime, who are, just screwed up in the head in ways that they didn't really have much control over. Neymar had a good enough support system around him where this thing has worked beyond anyone's wildest dreams. By any measure, Neymar is a success.
Yeah.
Whether it be on the field...
Sorry, Mark, before you go on, I want to emphasize that point, because in all the conversations, that's missed, right? Beyond if he retired, if his right leg was blown off by a cannonball today, he has been tremendously successful. I mean, there is no debating or conversation around that I'll accept or hear that he hasn't been, because objectively, he's had an insanely successful career. But sorry, go on. I think that's just missing from the conversation.
No, because we as fans and we as supporters and we as the morality police, we sort of we emphasize the wrong things. And here's what I mean. Neymar has made an insane amount of money in his life. The guy is set up 10 times over to put himself in a place of comfort, to provide for his family for as long as possible, to give his child and his future children chances to succeed. He has a foundation that he works with that helps children. He has awards, accolades, championships, this is a person who is successful by any measure of life except for one. And that's the universal acceptance of football fans. Which, in the grand scheme of things, isn't really that important.
Or maybe isn't even attainable.
It probably not, but you can at least get close.
Yeah.
And when you get into that realm and you are a Steven Gerrard, or even like right now a Mohamed Salah, I'll bring him up for example. Here's a guy who, during the World Cup or the build-up to the World Cup, took a promotional picture with the dictator, or the person who runs Chechnya, the dictator of Chechnya, who is accused of jailing homosexuals and lesbians, etc., etc. This is a horrible human being that he is taking promotional pictures with, and he claims he didn't know, and he claims that he was, led into it, or whatever. But here's a guy who, I can just say that one thing that he did is worse than anything Neymar's ever done in his life.
Yeah.
That one thing Mohamed Salah did is worse than anything Neymar's ever done. Maybe put together. If your worst thing you can say is that Neymar is a commercial whore, then, you know what, I'll take that over aloof guy who takes a picture
providing legitimacy to a anti-gay government.
To a butcher.
Basically.
He's providing legitimacy to a butcher. And because he's Mohamed Salah, because he's at a club that people genuinely like, because he has this goodwill that he's built up, that people love him, that people will run through walls for him, that he has that cult of personality about him that seeps into the media and seeps into the journalists and the pundits.
It's a good story, all these things. Yeah.
They let it go. Neymar would not have been allowed to get away with that. Yeah. There would be no chance that Neymar could do something like that and get away with it. It just wouldn't happen. We wouldn't hear the end of it.
Yeah.
There would be calls for him to be kicked off the Brazilian national team. There'd be calls for him to be, to be publicly shunned. This is what we're talking about here. There is a double standard. And in my opinion, Neymar, for the most part, is aiming for the right things in his life. But because he doesn't have that one thing, he will never get the benefit of the doubt. And he has his supporters, believe me. They're all on Twitter, and apparently they all follow me. But he doesn't have that universal adoration that a Messi or a Salah or a Harry Kane has, where you just have that leeway to get away with stuff. Nor does he have that sort of anonymity that some of these other people have, when you have a Jordan Pickford, the English goalkeeper at the World Cup, motherfucking people and, stomping on Mario Mandzukic, and everyone's saying, oh, what a warrior, what a hero Jordan Pickford is, when he acted like an asshole the entire World Cup. But because he has the anonymity as opposed to as opposed to what Neymar has, which is the spotlight without the adulation or the anonymity, he can get away with that.
Yeah.
And that's
I think you're absolutely right. Go ahead, sorry, Mark.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I think some of it is the nature of the territory, right? When you are the best or near the best, I think it is difficult to step away from the spotlight. And I think that you get less of the benefit of the doubt because there are always going to be people who are trying to tear you down. I think we live in a weird time where the best player in the world gets the benefit of the doubt. I don't think that's always been the case. And we talked about this last time, the weird cult of Messi. It's very bizarre. I don't think Ronaldo gets the benefit of the doubt. Actually, here's one for you, Mark.
He gets it more than he used to.
Yes. Imagine if Neymar had taken photos holding onto a goat for an advertisement.
Yeah.
Seriously. That was a very underplayed story.
Yeah.
That Messi did that. And I just wonder if Neymar had done it, what people would have said. It would have been horrible. It would have been absolutely horrible.
Yeah, but because you can twist that.
Yeah.
He's doing it ironically.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like you can,
but they're not willing to think of it that way if it's him, if it's Neymar. Like they're like, oh, he's serious. What an asshole. How could he say that?
Exactly. And that's sort of, where it's coming from. And just speaking of goats, I think you wanted to talk about just sort of the chasing ghosts aspect of this. Brazil has had hundreds of great football players in the sort of context of world football. They've had some of the all-time greats. They have the all-time great. And the pressure's just different for him. Messi's chasing one guy. Neymar's chasing a bunch of them.
Yeah, I think, first of all, it's very interesting to start with just a reminder of all that Neymar has achieved. I think we've recorded now for over 3 hours, and I think we haven't even touched on the fact that Neymar is the third highest scorer in the history of Brazil. And this is not a country that is not good at football. You know what I mean? It's the greatest footballing nation that this world has ever seen. And he is the third highest scorer ever. For that, and he'll likely end his career as number one. I have no doubt in my mind that he'll end his career as number one. The only people he's behind right now are Pele and Ronaldo. Keep in mind that he'll probably pass Ronaldo by the end of the calendar year 2018. Think about that for a second. Ronaldo was a striker. Neymar is a creative number 10, and he'll pass what many people believe is the best number 9 in history by the time he's 27. It's sensational. I mean, it's incredible to me. He wins the Copa Libertadores with Santos. He wins the Paulista several times with Santos. There's the Copa de Brazil a couple times. Goes to Barcelona. Wins La Liga. Wins the Copa del Rey multiple times. Wins the Champions League. I mean, that's a forgotten trophy, I think. I read the other day, actually, as I was preparing for this podcast, I had forgot about this statistic. Neymar is the first player to score home and away in the quarters, home and away in the semis, and in the final of a Champions League. No other player has done that ever in history. And people still call it Messi's Champions League. It's tough to make that argument when, Neymar is setting records. He's the highest goal scorer in that Champions League campaign as well.
Yeah.
Goes to PSG, wins the quadruple in his first year in a new league. I think what he's achieved is sensational. And what's amazing is that despite all that he's achieved, I think there are a lot of people that look at him and say that he has not made good on his sensational talent. And I think that actually that is the best way to sort of sum up simply how much pressure he is under for all of the things that I just mentioned that he won. And by the way, the Copa Libertadores at Santos, first Copa Libertadores since Pele was at the club in 1963. So he promised that, and he delivered that to the club when he was 19. For all of those things that he's achieved. Oh, I'm sorry, Mark. And it's amazing. I'm forgetting things, right, in his incredible career. The Olympics. First time Brazil has ever won the Olympics. Gold. And he was the best player on that team, obviously, and scored in the final. And
let me just make a point on that, too. In general, the Olympic soccer tournament is not exactly the most prestigious thing you can compete in. It's not really a top level thing to win. But
right.
That Brazilian team decided, we want to win this thing. They went for it. Neymar had no obligation to be on an Olympic team. And he got them a medal. It's not like Ronaldo's going to the Olympics with Portugal. You know what I mean? It's not like Messi's going to the Olympics with Argentina. It's just not going to happen. You don't see that. You don't see top players, essentially giving up their summer to go be at the Olympics and win a gold medal.
Yeah, because it was important, and it was on home soil. Yeah. And I think it gives you a sense for what it meant to him and how much he wants to repay his own debt to his country, basically, to being a Brazilian, right? I mean, and I think what I would say is that despite all of those achievements, and some of them are generational achievements that he's done. Some people would say that, and I'm not going to say that I say or don't say this, but a lot of people believe that he has not yet made good on his sensational talent. And that's the weight of the shirt. That's the weight of what he's chasing as a player. That's the weight of the fact that when he was 17, people said that he was going to be the next Pele, that he was the next Pele, that he was going to deliver Brazil to the promised land. I think, Neymar has obviously not won a World Cup. I think that's the one thing that he hasn't won. It's the only thing remaining that for him to win. the reality is that no one will ever beat what Pele did. It's impossible. In the modern game, for Pele to have been 17 years old when he won his first World Cup, to win the next one 4 years later, and then to win 1970, to win 3 World Cups in your career, that will never be replicated in history. It will just never happen. It's an impossible goal to chase. In the same way that I think in basketball, no one will ever win 6 NBA championships in a row, the way that Michael Jordan did. And I think it's foolish for us to hold people up to that standard, right? It was a meshing of opportunity and talent that will never probably be seen ever again. The actual weight and the pressure on Neymar to achieve something that is not achievable is immense. And I don't think that any of us truly understand or can grasp it or can, see it clearly. And I think the cult of Neymar only grew, you know what I mean? Like, the expectations on him only grew for 2018 when he ended up getting injured in 2014 and they lost 7-1 and he wasn't on the pitch. Because people are like, wow, what if Neymar had been there? You know what I mean? When the reality is if Neymar had been there, they probably still would have lost pretty badly. But it's just this sort of the pressure that he's under, the weight of expectation on Neymar is so intense that it almost like allows me to give him a bye, because I can't imagine on so many of the things that he does. I mean, so many of the antics and stuff, because like I said earlier, he was never meant to be normal. To hold him to the standards of a normal person is to miss so much of the context around his life, basically, because he's chasing things that are basically unchaseable. It
speaks to, I think, you talk about him not ever being normal, and I feel like when his career is over in 10 years or so, when he hangs it up, whatever happens, let's say he does win the World Cup eventually. He only wins one, but he wins the World Cup. How is he looked at by Brazil? And how is he looked at in general? Because I feel like eventually, when you're around long enough, if you do enough good things and you're consistently good, you're going to eventually turn people into your favor. I think Ronaldo is at that point, where I think Cristiano was the villain for so long, and I think he was put alongside Messi and used as sort of an example of, here's the villain and the hero is Messi. Eventually, yeah. I think they sort of were able to get to somewhat even. That balance was sort of restored a bit. Yeah. But it took a while for him to, I think, turn the majority of people into his favor, if that makes sense. And I think that, I guess it's the World Cup. Is it gotten to the point where whatever he does for Paris Saint-Germain, whatever he does for whatever the next club he goes to, is it just sort of as simple as he's got 2 more shots realistically at the World Cup, 2022 and 2026? If he doesn't do it, is that just the book is kind of closed on him being fairly or unfairly not an all-time, I guess it wouldn't be fair to say all-time great Brazilian, but is the World Cup just the end-all be-all for him? Is it that simple as he wins a World Cup, this all goes away?
I don't think it is that simple. I really don't think it's that simple. Because I think he will still, I think no matter whether he wins a World Cup or not, he'll finish his career as the greatest goal scorer in the history of Brazil. It doesn't matter if he wins the World Cup or not, he will finish his career that way. I think, so just to tell you, I think amongst Brazilians, Neymar is already greater than Ronaldinho. He's already achieved more. Like, he's already bigger. But if you ask a European person or like an American, like who's better? Who had the better career? Ronaldinho or Neymar? They would say, oh, Ronaldinho definitely 100%. It's just not accurate. I mean, Neymar has achieved so much more than Ronaldinho ever did already. He's only 26. Because I think, Mark, the whole thing with this podcast that we're doing is that it's not about what happens on the pitch. It's not about that with Neymar. And even if he wins a World Cup, like, will that help him? Absolutely, especially in the eyes of Brazilians. But in the eyes of, I think, European supporters and people who follow the game from the United States or wherever, as long as if they're not Brazilian, I think his legacy is art. He has just tarnished his legacy, and I'm trying to find the right words because he hasn't done it. It's not him. He didn't do it, but he has become the face of something that traditional media supporters are so, it's anathema to them to such a great extent that even if he won the World Cup this summer, even if he won the World Cup in 2022, it just is not going to change that perception. And I honestly don't even think it matters if he wins in 2022. I think it will impact his legacy in Brazil a lot, which is ultimately maybe what he cares about, and maybe doesn't care about all this other stuff. But I think his legacy, unfortunately, has been shaped already in other parts of the world.
You see, I do think there's a chance for that to change. I think more than maybe you do. Because over time, I think that old kind of curmudgeon-y European thinking isn't going to last. I think the future, and this is where I talk about the Iconoclast and what that really means, and why I think Neymar is the first of something. And right now, whether people agree with it or not, he is the first of something. And I think what he is the first of, and you've talked about this, I think he's the first athlete in this sport to actively be a millennial it's hard to describe it, but he's the first sort of just commercial being, like the first athlete brand. Messi's a brand, but Messi's not really a brand. They build a brand around Messi in the sense that Messi sells stuff, but Messi, I don't think, cares about selling shoes and selling shaved gel.
He was Messi first, and then he was a brand.
Yeah, exactly.
Neymar was a brand first, and then that's who he is.
Exactly. Yeah. Ronaldo is that same way. It is Messi. Neymar was and always will be a brand as much as he is a football player. And you'll see it more and more. You see guys like Alphonse Areola have like logos now. Like that was something that was only reserved for like the elite of the elite athlete. Yeah. To have your own sort of, not the team logo, your own personal logo. And Neymar has his own personal logo. He has his own personal brand. It was crafted from the beginning. It was crafted by his father and his advisors. He was meticulously worked through Santos, Barcelona, Paris Saint-Germain. Everything was calculated. The media, the sort of the way he's presented is calculated. And I don't necessarily hold that against him because we're in this sort of time where branding does matter. Yeah. And being a corporation as much as an athlete. And the fact that Neymar is not beholden to anybody. He does things on his terms. He is not beholden to a club. And I think more than anything else about him, the thing that is sort of, and I'm not going to say Jackie Robinson-esque, but maybe more like LeBron James-esque in the sense that he's the first of something. LeBron James and Neymar have that similarity. When you're the first of something, and people follow behind it. Neymar is the first of something. And he's the first of that athlete that doesn't need the club. He's bigger than the club. He is an entity. He is the brand. Yeah. Neymar is the brand, and whatever club he goes to, he will be the brand. And it's why I think this Real Madrid stuff would be a mistake for Neymar, in the sense that it would dilute his brand to go to Real Madrid. I'm sorry, it would. Because he would be another one of the white shirts.
Yeah.
And I don't think he wants to just be another one of the white shirts. I don't think that benefits him. And I think that in history, when we look back at it, Neymar is going to be a hugely influential figure in this sport. And you are going to see more young athletes coming up doing it this way. Being their own person, being their own brand, not being beholden to just another member of the club. And it might take a while, because I still think he's out there right now, more than other athletes are. I think more than a lot of people are willing to be. You still have the badge kissers out there who, kiss the corporate logo of the people that pay them. And Neymar's not that guy. And I think in the recent future, in the near future, I think he will be looked at as a very much a vilified figure. But I think in 20, 30, 40 years, when all athletes are like this, and all athletes are sort of signing 1-2 year deals, and there's movement between clubs, and the clubs are less important than they were, I think he'll be looked at in the same way. And I want to kind of end this with this comparison, because I feel like he is, in certain ways, soccer's Jack Johnson. And just to looking up who Jack Johnson was and what he represented, I think they're very similar in that way, that they were 20, 30 years ahead of their time. In Jack Johnson's case, he was 60 years out of his time.
Yeah, I was going to say.
He was, the next person after him was Muhammad Ali, but there wouldn't have been a Muhammad Ali without a Jack Johnson. There wouldn't have been a Joe Louis without a Jack Johnson. And I don't think there's going to be so many players in the future who are brands and who are free, completely free from sort of the old European hierarchy of we're the club, you the players, you do what we tell you, boy. And the person that is going to lead that way is Neymar, beyond anybody else. More than Ronaldo, more than Messi, more than any of those guys. He's the guy that is the first of that. That's why he is the iconoclast.
I love it. I think you're absolutely right. I think as we think about sort of, how we structure the podcast, I think that is the way